Hello, everyone. I am Amissa, Marketing Manager here at Upkeep, and I'm excited to welcome you all to today's webinar, Boost Your Maintenance Game with Upkeep's latest product improvements. So I'm excited about today's webinar because not only are we going to show you some updates to Upkeep, but we also have some awesome new features as well to show. But before we get started, let's go through a few things. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, please type them into the questions box. We will have time at the end for Q&A, and we'll answer as many of those questions as we can as time allows. And if you have any comments, you can type them into the comments box. In fact, why don't we try that out? Everyone that's here, tell us where you're joining us from. And I personally would like to know what the weather is like where you're at. So type that in. Let's test this out. Okay, we got someone from Germany, all over the world, Kentucky, Michigan. Wow. I'm here in Oregon. We have a lot of our headquarters is in Los Angeles. Whoa. Zambia, Colorado. Oh my goodness. So many people from so many different places around the world. That's amazing. I love seeing people from all over joining us. That's really cool. Well, without further ado, let's get going. Presenting today, we have a handful of people from our product team. So why don't you introduce yourselves? Let's start with Boyd.
All right, I want to make sure I was off mute, so I stopped sharing for just a second here. Hi, everyone. My name is Boyd Butler, and I am our Director of Product Management here at Upkeep. Very excited to be talking to you all today about our April release.
Hey everybody, my name is Mark McKelvey, and I'm a Senior Product Manager here at Upkeep.
Hey everybody, I'm Nate Parsons, one of the Senior Product Managers here at Upkeep as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Welsh, the Mobile App Product Manager here at Upkeep.
Hey everybody, I'm Daniel Binkowski, also a Senior Product Manager here at Upkeep, in charge of identity and permissions.
Great, thanks everyone. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of all the April features, I want to give a quick summary of the release as a whole. So focusing on our 3 release themes for the April release. First up is harnessing machine and sensor data to streamline maintenance through automation. So this is all about our newest product offering, Data Hub, where we're working with customers to help extract data from their programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, as well as other sensors, perform some transformations on that data, and feed it into Upkeep meters to help trigger both preventive and reactive work orders based on usage or condition data. So really, we're trying to make sure customers are getting the most value out of that data that's being collected about their asset performance. Next up is multi-location optimization. This has been an ongoing theme over the course of our last few releases at Upkeep. Last year, we released our location-based permissions, allowing you to simplify the experience of your users by only displaying data for the locations they're assigned to within the Upkeep application. With the April release, we've continued to expand upon this with our multiple inventory lines feature. This is a major enhancement to the parts and inventory module, allowing you to now create and store a single part record with many inventory lines across locations attached to that record. Lastly is offline premium. We've done a lot of enhancements to our offline mode for mobile app over the last year, and we now have some capabilities that allow you to automate the saving of work orders for offline use, as well as create work orders while you're offline so that you don't interrupt your workflow while you're away from a solid connection. A handful of other things here in the feature updates that the team will get into more detail on, but we're continuing to expand on our custom roles. We've done a lot of work to reduce the sync time from the core database to our analytics database. We're having more logical grouping of tasks within work orders for checklists that have a lot of complexity to them, and continuing to enhance preventive maintenance as well as some other UI and notification related updates. A couple of quick things that I want to mention that are coming soon. We're continuing to expand upon the parts and inventory with transfers of inventory across those inventory lines. Our export and import capabilities will be enhanced to now include checklists. The offline mode will continue to be expanded by now allowing for images to be uploaded to tasks while offline. And we're continuing the UI updates with the ability to now have an updated UI on purchase orders. So that's a quick summary of everything that we're going to dig into some more detail on. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mark McKelvey to talk to us about Data Hub.
Awesome. Thanks, Boyd. All right. So I wanted to start off by just recapping the broader vision for Data Hub. And that vision is to build an integrated and centralized data ecosystem for world-class asset operations. And we want to bring together passive and active data to provide you with total asset data visibility and help you to drive insights and analysis for informed asset management. So that's the broader vision. What can we do with Data Hub today? Well, we can automate usage and condition-based maintenance. And we do that by extracting and collecting asset data from sensors or PLCs, loading that sensor data into Upkeep meters, and then leveraging those meters to trigger reactive or preventive work orders. Now that's all well and good, but in many cases, the data coming from your sensors and PLCs is not in the optimal format. It's not ready to be sent straight to meters. And that's where the models feature comes into play. With models, you'll be able to select data from different sources, combine data from different sources, transform that source data before you ultimately send it on to your meters. Let me show you how it works. Suppose I'm a maintenance manager and I have this milling machine here. And what I like to do is set up a usage-based maintenance program. And I want to base that on the total parts produced by this milling machine. Track the total parts. And what I can do is I can come in and create a work order trigger. And what I want to do is kick off a work order for every 100 parts produced. And what I want to do is I want to have a tech come out and service the machine at every 100 parts produced. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, I could update these meter readings manually, but updating manually is error prone and tedious and time consuming. So instead, I want to automate these meter readings with Data Hub. So what I've done here is I've come in and I've created a source for this milling machine. And that source is connected to a PLC that is controlling this milling machine. Now, the catch is this PLC only sends us parts data at a given point in time. So if the machine produces one part, it's going to send us a reading of 1. If it produces 5 parts, it's going to send us a reading of 5, and so on. Now that's great, but it's not going to help us with our usage-based maintenance plan. We need a running total of parts produced. So what I can do is come over to the Models tab, and I can create a model. And the model I'm going to create is milling machine total parts. And what this particular model is going to do is it's going to calculate a running total of parts produced. So I'm going to go ahead and select that source, the milling machine. I'm going to grab the parts, and then here's where the transformation comes into play. I'm going to select the accumulator transformation for this case. And what the accumulator does is it calculates a running total for the source values that come in for this particular model. And that's exactly what I need for my meter. So I'm going to select that. And the property is going to be total parts now. Quantity is going to remain the same, and I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Now what I need to do is sync up that model data to my meters. So I'm going to create a sync. It's going to be the milling machine sync. And I'm going to grab that model that I just created, the machine total parts, And I'm going to sync it to Upkeep meters. And the meter that I want to sync it to is my milling machine total parts meter. So I'm going to go ahead and find that guy. Perfect. I'm going to click save. All right, now I'm all synced up and we're ready to start capturing some readings for this particular milling machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and generate a reading for this PLC. And the reading that I'm going to generate is 25 parts produced. So I'm going to go ahead and kick that off. And now let's go ahead and refresh the page. And there we have it. 25 parts produced from my PLC. Now let's see what happens if I send an additional 25. All right. Let's see. Oh, there we go. We have 50 parts produced. We're getting that running total. Great news. Let's go ahead and send 25 more. And then one more set of 25 just for good measure. And there we go. 75 and 100. And we've triggered our meter trigger. So if I come over to my work orders, and there is my work order to service the machine. And there we have it. Usage-based maintenance automated from end to end, courtesy of Models and Data Hub. Now, before I go, I want to just point out a couple other notes or features of Models. Number one, in addition to the accumulator transformation, we also have a runtime transformation. This is great if you're getting data from a PLC or sensors that's more of kind of a Boolean character. So it's some sort of like on-off indicator or switch. With this transformation, we can take those Boolean values, those on-off values, and we can calculate a runtime in terms of seconds, minutes, and probably most often hours, which can be really valuable for you. Also, in some cases, the data might actually be coming in as is, and you don't need any transformations at all. In that case, you can simply select none, and we'll just pass the data on through. One final note here, you can add multiple sources, and you can bring in different properties from the same source. So for instance, I have this natural gas tank here with temperature and humidity. I can bring those in. And I can also bring in data from other sources too, so I can combine it all together. Now, this will come into play in a much bigger way once we start adding additional destinations where it makes sense to start bringing in data from Upkeep and from your sensors and PLCs. So that's Models. We're really excited about it. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Nate.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again here. So I'm going to cover two features. The first one being parts with multiple inventory lines. And what this allows you to do is really take those multiple items that you currently have today and combine them into one. So if you are storing your inventory across a variety of locations, whether that's geographically or just within potentially a warehouse, having different stock rooms, managing those inventories today is two separate records. And what we're going to allow you to do is group those into one. This is going to reduce the overall amount of records that you actually have in your parts module there. And then it's going to allow you to be a lot more specific about where you're taking that inventory from and building that accuracy there. So as you can see in this image here, under one record, we have 6 different inventory lines throughout the country. And each of those have a different quantity. They have different statuses for what their stock indicators are. And really, this will allow you to be able to look at this kind of holistic view and see what is occurring with your inventory just at that one level. The next item that we're going to cover is the PM based on completion. Now, we'll go back and do demos after this. The PM based on completion is exactly the same logic that we have for the creation cadence for a repeat regular. And now we will allow you to defer out the creation of the work order for your based on completion PMs. Today, what you may be used to is every time you complete the work order that was generated from a PM, it would immediately fire off the new one. And sometimes this caused individuals to delete that work order or change something about it and move it around. And then it potentially impacts your future instantiations and how it schedules there. So what we allow you to do is simply indicate how many days prior you would like to have that work order actually completed and hone in on a more accurate timeline of having that work order open. So this is going to reduce the overall amount of open work orders that you have, and it should prevent any of those deletions and then potentially not understanding why a PM did not fire off. Again, we have lots of new features coming for PMs that we can kind of hope to complement this with as well. One note is for anybody who has a based on completion PM today, what's going to happen is the creation cadence is going to mimic what the schedule cadence is. So if you had a work order that was supposed to generate every 100 days, your creation cadence will match that as well. So it doesn't throw anybody off and they don't understand where those work orders went. Then you can go in and now modify those and say, hey, I actually want it 1 week before it's due so I can accurately plan who's going to take it, what day it's going to fall on specifically, and work it into our schedules. With that, I'm going to jump over into the application. And what I'm going to hit on here is our parts and inventory. So as you can see right now, again, this is just a demo environment, but I have these exact same parts across a variety of locations. And if I need to update something for this, whether it's the description or the cost or something of that nature, and it does uniquely apply to all of these records, then I have to do that, right, 5-6 times to go through every time and modify that data, which is really not the way it should be done. So what we're going to do is I'll actually walk us through the process of how we turn on the feature and group everything together. And as you can see here, one of our requirements is that the part number be added to the record. So all inventory today needs to have that part number associated to it, which would match with all of the items that you are attempting to group together. And we have the documentation calls this out, but I really want to be clear on that. If you go through proceeding with setting up this feature and you do not have that part number associated, it will not display with the feature on. So you don't lose any data, it just will not display. So I navigate over here to settings, and then we have a new section right now for parts. And what I'm going to do is enable that. Again, I already have these part numbers associated, so it allowed me to, I don't have to go through and do this import process, but obviously in a bulk fashion, you would likely do that via import. So now we have this function of auto grouping. This is going to take all of our parts that have the same part number and combine them together into one record. Again, we direct you to that import process and make you validate that there are part numbers on these records. So once I go through and do this, I'm going to have a grouping in process indication and a success message. And I'll always recommend you just go in and do a refresh. Once we do that, if I come back over to my parts records, now you can see that instead of having each of these records times 5, I actually only show the individual lines. Now, if you are restricted to your location, using our new location-based permissions, then you will only see the ones that apply to you or that you have access to as well based on those inventory lines. So you can see here, and I might want to come and change some of my columns around and get the stuff that matters to me. And when I do that, it gives me a very good view of everything for this one part. So I currently have one record that's out of stock and one that's low on stock. These are low on stock and I have one out of stock here. So if I go ahead and click into this record, now I can see each of those individual locations. So if I also want to indicate what area they are, all of these items are now have the identical details for them. So I come here, I can see the description, I can see the category if I want to add an image or any of those items, then I only have to do that the one time. And if I wanted to add a new inventory now, if say I expand and I have a new location, I simply come, select the location that it's going to go to, and then I have 4 here, and I can add that inventory immediately. And that allows me to skip that whole step of creating new part records. It keeps our data really clean together. Again, we don't have any settings currently applied, so that way you can force this data. However, we do have a lot of settings to make this very functional. So if you are creating if you're creating a lot in one setting, then you can default that the barcode is all the same or the minimum quantity is all the same. Lots of really unique features there. What I'm going to show you next is how it appears on the work order. So if I come over to my work orders, what you will notice today is that scroll down to parts, is that we display the location on the end of it. Again, if you are restricted to a certain location, you will only get those individual lines, which makes it really helpful. So it can clean up the overall parts list for any of your users. So if I want to select that one, I can add that part, and then it'll display on the parts list as well, right there. And then I can increase the quantity if I need that one. Now, if I come back to this record, we keep the individual associations relevant now based on each specific location. So that way you can see all the work orders that were applied here, and then I can also see the adjustments if I come in and I make a manual adjustment. So if I want to add 55 to this, say I did a restock and it did not go through a purchase order, then I would just do a manual one. And now I can come over to our adjustments and see for Texas that I just adjusted these 55. So it really is going to clean up just that functional use. What Boyd had also mentioned at the very beginning of this is we are going to introduce transferring. So if you have a central warehouse or location that you want to actually move inventory to inventory, that's going to be from line to line. It'll be over in this menu option. And then you can kind of go through and really retain that transaction history from one record to another. That does only apply for one specific part record. However, you cannot transfer from part to part because we can't ensure the consistency there. Anyways, thank you all. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. I'll respond to some of those, and I'm going to pass it over to Mark Welsh.
Thanks, Nate. I'm going to walk you through a couple of the features we've been working on mobile, all around the lines of making our offline mode a more premium experience. So up until this date, our offline mode was a manual process. You had to bookmark a work order while you're online for then it to be available offline. The problem with this is you're busy, you're on the go. You have to remember to bookmark that work order for it to actually be available to you while offline. The other issue is you also may not know that you're going to have connectivity issues. Yes, you may be going to a remote area, or you might be going underground where there's a guaranteed offline experience. But we learned from our customers that there's assets in certain facilities that offline is sometimes not an issue, sometimes it's not. Connectivity is inconsistent, to say the least. I'll even say when I go to certain areas in my kitchen or in my home office, sometimes connectivity is a problem. So bookmarking would not solve that. So our solution for this is what we call auto cache work orders. What that is work orders will automatically be available to you while you're offline based on a couple criteria. And these criteria came to us by having a lot of conversations with maybe some of you on the webinar and all of our users. But the goal is if the work order is assigned to you or your team, and that work order has a non-operational asset added to it, or it's due within the working week of the user, then we consider working week Monday through Sunday. And that also includes past due work orders then the work order will automatically be available to you offline. Again, really the goal here is to eliminate that manual process instead of Upkeep creating lift to actually make your job easier while offline. And then overall for you not to have to worry about, hey, is there going to be connectivity problems? No matter what, your work orders are available to you to work on. The next feature that we built out is work order drafts. Until this release, we actually had no draft capability whatsoever, online or offline. And to be honest, most of our competitors don't have this draft capability either. The problem with this is if you want to have the best, most complete data and work orders created, it can take time. Your job is on the go. You're busy. You are interrupted and disrupted sometimes. Sometimes more urgent matters, fall into your lap. And so if you're in the middle of creating a work order and there's no draft capability, then you lose all that data. You lose all that progress. That's frustrating. That throws you off from completing your work. And so we want you to be able to complete your work orders, in a more seamless fashion, and not have to lose that data and lose that progress. And then offline, you might have a work order that's automatically cached. You're going through your inspection, but you notice other work that needs to be identified and created. If you're offline, you might not be able to create that work order until hours, if not the next day. So that hurts data quality, and potentially you forget to. I forget things every day. If you're not able to create that work order until the next day, chances of you creating it decrease dramatically. So for us, we want you to be able to save your work, save your progress, to finish it and complete it on your own time and have that flexibility. So you'll have a save draft prompt and you'll have an access to those drafts on your mobile app at all times for you to update those drafts throughout the day, or obviously submit them as actual work orders, when it's up to you. Now, if the app does cancel out for whatever reason, you get a phone call, you get a notification from another application, and you go to that app. If the app exits, it will save automatically. Our goal is for your drafts to conserve your data, make sure data quality is great, and also just make your day more efficient as a whole. With these premium editions come updates and packaging and plan type. So for those of you that are on a starter plan, you will not have offline capabilities. You won't be able to update status, update task, or create offline drafts. You will, as a starter, be able to create online drafts. The one caveat to this is if you're on the starter plan before April 13th, you will retain access to the manual offline capabilities. We never want to take away features from you as we build new ones. So starter plans before April 13th, you will retain that bookmarking manual process. Professional plans, you'll get the bookmarking of work orders. And you also get a little taste of auto cache. You'll get up to 5 work orders that cache automatically. And when they're cached, you can update status, update task and comments. Professional plan, you'll get unlimited drafts online, and you'll get to create 2 drafts while offline to identify that work. And then Business Plus, you'll get up to 100 auto cache work orders, all the bookmarking, updating status, update task, unlimited online drafts, and unlimited offline drafts. Now I'm going to actually give you a demo of both of these features. So brace with me for 2 seconds, maybe 3, maybe 4. Pulling up my mobile app here. All right, so I'll show you auto cache. So I have connectivity right now. To show it, I'm going to go airplane mode. You see auto cache here on the screen. You'll see this on the work order tab of where these are accessed. You do get a little prompt here reminding you if it's due within the working week or if it's bookmarked. This is where you access them. You see on the top right, I have up to 100 auto cache work orders. Rock on. I'm going to go into them. I'm a maintenance manager, by the way, of Augusta National Golf Course in my demo account. So you'll see a lot of maintenance on golf holes or whatsoever. So I have a inspection here of hole 1, get my hole into Masters Prep, big golf tournament. I can update status, go into my task list, update my task. Boom, go through that. How would Tiger Woods describe green quality? Superb. And then I got one thing here, create a work order, what still needs to be done. How do I do that? Let's go into our drafts here. Boom. This is how we create a draft. I noticed that Phil Mickelson left huge divot on T-Box. Oh, I'm going to save that draft. And then I'll show you the online capability. Go online. I'm back online. Then your drafts are stored right where you create them. So boom, drafts are right there. I go to this draft I saved offline. I can update it some more, continue to save it as a draft, or the ultimate goal, submit it as a work order. So that's that. If you have any questions, please let us know. If not, Daniel, take it away.
All right. Let me share my screen. Awesome. So one of the kind of big things that my team works on is our custom roles. This is a feature that does already exist right now, but we just rolled out a pretty big expansion to that. Custom roles are available on Business Plus. So if you haven't checked those out yet, I'd highly recommend it. And there's kind of two big things that we did to expand this feature. So the first is we split out the settings for create, edit, and view to be much more granular. So before, a lot of these like create and edit were lumped together in a single permission for a role. And now you can actually control those permissions separately. So maybe you don't want someone creating, new locations, but you do want to let them edit those locations to update information or things like that. We've also expanded significantly what you can set permissions for. So we've added some permissioning to preventive maintenance, as well as pretty full permissioning for locations, assets, imports and exports, editing work orders, assigning work orders, and meters. I'll kind of show more detail of what's provided there in a demo in a second after I go through the slide. But this essentially gives you almost full permissioning between the current limited admin role and the technician role. There's still a couple things missing there. So analytics and most request related stuff isn't included yet. But for the most part, you can fully configure a custom role that lies somewhere between a limited admin and a technician. Now, there's a bunch of use cases for this, and I kind of want to highlight a couple of those that have come up a lot. So the first is a sort of a team lead permission. So maybe you have someone who's managing, a group of technicians, and you want to give them more control than just a normal technician. They need to be able to, let's say, assign a workout to their team, manage work orders more extensively than a technician normally could for their team. But you don't want them to have full limited admin permissions and everything that comes with that in terms of creating some other objects. So now, you can essentially permission someone to be similar to a technician, but give them the sort of added permissioning around being able to manage work orders and assign work orders out to their team that they wouldn't have as just a technician normally. The second big one is inventory managers. So, we see a lot where someone has like a dedicated person who's just managing parts. You don't really want them to have admin access or limited admin access to most of the rest of the application, but you need them to have, full control, full admin just over parts and inventory specifically. So you'll be able to do that now where you essentially can give them a technician level role in general, but give them full admin access to parts and inventory management. And then the other one that's come up quite a bit is sort of coordinator roles, where you have someone who's assigning out work, and you don't really want them again to have like full limited admin access, but you want them to be able to assign out work orders to the team or sort of manage workload across even multiple sites or multiple assets. So this is great now, right? Because you can essentially set up all of these custom roles to meet those sort of needs. The other use case is if you want to restrict a limited admin down further. So there's some customers who the feature sets involved in limited admin specifically are too expansive for what they want their limited admins to be able to do. So this will essentially let you restrict down specific things that maybe you don't want them messing around with or accidentally touching. So it's pretty extensive in terms of what you can do now between the limited admin and the technician role. And I'll kind of jump in the app and show you more in just a second. The second feature I wanted to mention here real quick is grouping tasks by the checklist they're actually from. So this is available on kind of all our plans. Anyone who has access or is using checklists, and specifically, if you're using multiple checklists on your work order, this just gives you a little bit of extra kind of UI UX fluidity when you're building out those checklists or building out those work orders with multiple checklists or editing them. So as you can see, we actually have headers now where the tasks are grouped under the name of the checklist they come from. You can actually drag these entire sections down instead of having to like rearrange individual tasks. You can rearrange the checklist as a whole, and you can also click these to collapse them. If you have hundreds of tasks across a bunch of checklists and you're trying to work through and edit those on a work order, you can collapse down things to hide them so you don't have to scroll as much. These are kind of mild UI UX improvements. There are big backend changes involved, so there's kind of more to come here. In specific, I want to call out that in July, we're planning to release this sort of UI for people actually working work orders on the mobile app. So this should be, again, a great improvement for use cases where you have a lot of tasks and a lot of checklists, and it's hard to tell, where kind of one group of activities ends and another begins. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over into the application and show you a little more about custom roles. So if you haven't seen it before, if you go to settings and then go over here to roles, this is where you can see sort of all of our default roles, but you can also manage custom roles. So you can see I have kind of an example custom role set already here. You can, of course, edit these or delete them, and then you can create new roles. So with custom roles, as you can see now, we have a lot more things here. As I mentioned, we split out, create and edit, which is great. So you can have more granularity of control there. And then we added things into view. Specifically, I want to call it preventive maintenance triggers. So right now, the only permission we have on PM triggers is view permission. So basically, you can either give someone total access by giving them view permission, or you can give them no access by eliminating view permission. So this is sort of the only partial permissioning that we've done as part of this. As you can see, we have full sort of import and export granularity now. So if you want people to be able to pull data out to maybe run reports or analyze data farther, but you don't want them to, upload anything, we actually split those permissions out, which is great. We also had permissioning for disabling people. So we have a new feature where you can actually disable individual roles and users. So you can set permissioning for that, as well as being able to even work orders, approve or decline work requests, or assign users. So as I mentioned, a lot of this stuff is new. I'd highly encourage you to come poke around in here. I also want to show you just how this assign users work. So what this lets you do is if you remove like edit permissions from work orders, but you allow assign, normally to assign a user to a work order, you'd have to actually go in and edit, right? You'd have to go into edit and assign the worker. But obviously, if they don't have edit permission, they can't do that. So what we did to support this is in this little menu right here, we added an option to actually assign a user or a team, which brings up this modal that's essentially the same fields. So if someone doesn't have edit permission to a work order, but they do have assign permission, they'll be able to have access to this in the menu and still assign workers out. So again, in case of a team manager who you don't want them fully editing work orders, but they need to be able to assign work to their teams, this will allow them to do that effectively. Great, and that's all for me. I will stop sharing and hand it back over to Boyd.
Great, thanks, Daniel. All right, a few more features to talk through here, and then some quick demos, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. We're getting a lot of stuff in through the chat and responding to those directly, but we want to make sure those questions get surfaced to the broader audience. So first item here is our analytics sync time. Our analytics backend system saw a pretty significant overhaul over the last few months. So we were hearing from you all last year that there were some challenges with the amount of time as well as the consistency with which data entered in the core database was syncing and then available within analytics. So the way that this actually works is we do take the data from the core database and sync it to a separate database that's optimized for reporting purposes. The reality is there's a lot of complexity there, but we heard you and we wanted to address that issue. So we're very excited that we now are in a state where we are consistently replicating data and making it available within analytics within less than an hour of that data being entered in the core system. That represents more than a 50% reduction in sync time. So that helps improve reliability and results in faster report building. Up next is our request UI update. This is one of many UI changes that you'll see from us where we're moving a lot of our pages in the web application from our older user interface technology to our newer technology. So the first piece of this year was with parts and inventory, and that allowed us to then go build the multiple inventory lines feature that you saw.
Hey, Boyd, you're not sharing your screen. Sorry to interrupt. Some of the people are asking for that one. Hold tight, everybody. We'll be there in a second.
Sorry. Thanks, Nate. Okay. There's our analytics view and our request UI update. So parts and inventory was the first page that we moved over earlier this year. We've now done the requests UI, and then up next is going to be purchase orders. So you'll see this continuously from us. And our goal here is to have increased consistency across the web application as a whole. As we upgraded our request page to the latest technology, we also wanted to look at some of the major enhancements that we were seeing from customers and see what we could work into that project. One of the ones that we heard the most frequently was around locations. So we actually added location as a column, and that can now be used to filter your list of requests. So this is also going to allow us to unblock further improvements to the request page. So please let us know what else you would like to see here. All right, up next is saved views for parts and requests. This is one of the more interesting and kind of subtle enhancements as part of the April release. So we know that as you're in a list view, you're often applying a lot of filters. Well, that may mean a number of clicks to get to the exact view that you want. So what we want to allow you to do is save that exact filtered list so that you can quickly return to that over time. So you may want to look at parts that are low or out of stock, or you may want to be looking at your request view and filter that down to things that are in a pending state within the locations that you're responsible for. So this allows you to save that view. What it also allows you to do is take the URL and share it with another user internally so that you're very quickly looking at the same list with the same data without having to make sure you've applied the same filters there. That same URL can also be shared with Upkeep for any necessary troubleshooting purposes. And this is a pattern that, while today it's available on parts and requests, we plan to expand this across the application over time. All right, work order email notification control. This is a common one that we've been hearing from you all for a while. And what we ultimately want to give you is the ability to have granular control over which email notifications you do and do not receive from Upkeep. So this was the first wave of this, focused on work orders, and we're going to continue to expand on this by limiting the emails that you see based on your assigned locations. We'll be expanding into requests, daily summaries, purchase orders, and more. And finally, a few things to hit quickly here before getting into a demo of the few of these. Stopping multiple timers. We know that throughout the day, technicians may start a job, they've got their timer running, something more urgent comes up that they need to quickly pay attention to. Well, they're not always focused on, oh, I need to stop my timer before I move to this other job. So now what we have in the mobile app is a bit of a warning message there. If you go to start a timer and you have other timers running, you're going to receive a message indicating, we've noticed there's other timers running. Do you want to go ahead and stop those before starting this new timer? So that's going to help to really get more accurate time tracking on work orders and also reduce those situations where you need to do some time data cleanup after the fact. Next is user-specific language settings. I did see a question earlier about whether we support Spanish. We do support Spanish on both the mobile and web application. With the web application prior to this release, you had the option to have a global setting. So one language for all your web users. We now have the ability for users to set their individual language settings. So the entirety of the application for the majority of your users can be on one language, and individual users can set it to their preference. Next is around exporting work orders to PDF. We know that many of you need to do this on occasion for internal reporting purposes or perhaps for audit purposes. We really upped the limit there to now allow you to export up to 1,000 to really streamline that process. You kick off the job, you'll be notified via email when that has completed. Lastly, here's around our API. We're always taking your feedback and trying to make sure we're closing the gaps between what's available within the core product and what's available via our API. So we've done some enhancements to assets. We've also made some enhancements around tasks to include images and comments. And then lastly is a number of API enhancements related to meters. A lot of these really driven by the work we're doing around Data Hub. So let's go in and take a quick look at a couple of these features. So first, we're seeing our requests list view. You can see that this has gone through some major updates, and it's now much more in line with what you see in parts and inventory, like Nate was showing earlier. You can also see we've added a column for location. So let's say I want to go through this list and I want to filter to any items that are in a pending state. And I want to filter down to anything associated with Tower 1. So I'm going to select all these individual sublocations and go ahead and save. So that didn't take too much time, but I did make about 8 clicks there. So this is a list that I want to review regularly associated with Tower 1 and anything in a pending status. So I can go up to this save view and I can save this as pending items. Now, let's say I'm going throughout my day, I'm navigating between pages, I'm looking at other filtered lists on requests, and my whole list view gets reset to this full list. Rather than going through those 8 clicks or so that I applied before to get to that, I simply come over to my saved views and click Tower 1 pending, and I'm returned to that list. So you can save as many of these as you want. Again, this is available today on both requests and parts, but we plan to have the same pattern across other portions of the application. The other thing to point out here is all these filters are actually stored in the URL. So you can see this status of requested or pending is up here. You can see some of this location information. All I have to do is copy and paste this whole URL, and I can actually share that with someone internally, and we can very quickly be looking at the same list view. Last item I want to show is around our email notification control. If you've worked with this before, you may be familiar with this page. Here, it's kind of all or nothing for each portion of the app. I can either receive everything related to work orders, and I can turn everything off. Well, that's not granular enough for what you all need. So there's now this new location for notification settings. And when you pull this up, you're going to see a list of different email notifications specifically related to work orders. So I can see here 7 different options for different email notifications that come from Upkeep related to work orders. All I want to receive is a notification when a work order I'm assigned to has been created or updated, when I'm an admin and an unassigned work order has been created or updated, and I've been mentioned on work order updates. Any of these other items are going to be filtered out, so I have the ability to focus on what's most important for me in my role. That's what we had for all the features and the demos that we wanted to show today. So I'm going to pass it back to Amissa to wrap us up, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
Thank you, Boyd. So if you're excited by these features you saw today, there is an opportunity for you to try them out. So we are offering all webinar registrants a free trial of Business Plus. Your trial would start May 1st and run through the end of June. And I put a link in the comments where you can head to sign up. One caveat to keep in mind is that you do have to sign up before the end of the day tomorrow to get that free trial. So go to the comments, click on the link, and that'll take you to the sign up page for the free trial Business Plus. Okay, let's get into some Q&A. Let's see here. Do you want to field certain questions, Nate, maybe, that you think would be good ones to answer?
Yeah, so we just got one in from Emily, and it was about the request display and showing the completed requests. And I think the best way to answer that really for you, Emily, is two-parted. One is filtering on the actual status of the request, and then you can look at your approved. And then the second piece of that would be setting it as a saved view. And that way you can quickly navigate to just those and then go find all of your completed requests. Hopefully that helps you.
Cool. I saw some people wondering, like which languages it's available in, and it seems like there's quite a few. Do you want to reference that again?
Certainly. So I did post two links within the chat there. One is for your web and one is for your mobile device. Currently, our mobile device does support a few more languages than web does. And you can see that for mobile, we have English, Spanish for Mexico, and Spanish for Spain, Russian, Portuguese, German, French, Chinese, simplified, and Arabic. And then in our web, we currently support English, Spanish, Arabic, German, and we do have beta for French as well. So if you would like to reach out specifically to support or your CSM, then we can get your account configured on web as well for that one. Any more questions? Mark, maybe that can, looks like Susanna had a question for where they can check their version of the Upkeep app.
Yeah, if you go to the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, search Upkeep. That is where you can see the latest versions of what you're on.
Awesome. And I see Daniel has a question about role options, and he's not permitted. And that's likely because of your permissions there. Daniel, you might not be an administrator with access to that.
Yeah, so by default, only admins have access to custom roles, since that's like a pretty granular permission feature, and we keep that pretty tight. So if that's something you want to be able to access and you're not currently an admin, I would definitely talk to whoever your main admin is and see if that's something that they would like you to have access to.
And it's also a plan restriction item, right, Daniel? So
yeah, it is also only on Business Plus. So if you're not on Business Plus, you won't have access to roles. If you want to try it out, I definitely would encourage you to try our Business Plus free trial through the end of the quarter that Amissa mentioned.
There was a question that came through. Looks like someone was wondering if there's a way to disable the timer feature only for the techs, because they don't actually like using that.
We don't have any, as far as permissions for like custom roles or something like that, we don't currently have a permission for that. We're hoping to build out more functionality later this year to kind of go down from tech to limited tech and then eventually down to view only. So it's definitely something we can look into for specifically having permission around if that's visible or not.
Yeah, and I recommend too to everyone, please do reach out to your customer success manager, because if there's questions we missed or we didn't get you the full answer that you were looking for, they could definitely help you understand some of these new features and answer a lot of your questions as well.
Yeah, I might add one question that I saw come in. Can a model sync to multiple meters on the data hub side? And yes, a model can be used and reused for a number of different destinations, a number of different meters. So you can certainly do that.
And then it looks like we're getting a fair amount of requests for viewing some analytics. Boyd, would it be good if I hop in there and just give a brief overview of some of our analytics?
Sure, we've got a few minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And for anybody that is not familiar, this analytics module allows you two things. One is out-of-the-box reports, and the other is the ability to custom create your own. So if you first come in, you'll see this view button in the top, and you'll be able to see all of these different module options, essentially. This top portion are what we call the out-of-the-box report, right? And then just please keep in mind, a lot of this stuff in this environment is just test data or such, so it may not 100% make sense. But you can go to any of these reports and they have certain information about what is occurring within those modules. And so as you can see here, they have filters up at the top and a few variety of different displays so you can get there. Some really nice things. If I say, hey, here are my current work orders, I want to see that complete count, then you can drive into some of those records, and it'll bring you a little bit more of this detailed data view. So I highly recommend explore around, check these different reports, what you might be looking for. Now, the next level of this is actually what we would say is our custom dashboards portion. And so if you see below the gray line on every one of these modules, there's this explore option. And what this does is take you to more of a technical database view where you can actually configure and create a dashboard based on some of these settings. So all of these dimensions are what you would find within the actual records themselves. So I might want to say the asset name, and I want to see the ID number for it potentially, and then maybe a parent asset. And then what I can do is actually then combine those with, say, my reactive or recurring work order counts, and however you would like to configure these. Now, I'm going to show the very basic data view for starters. So I have a few of these columns, and then I'm going to run that, and it's going to pull the data from your Upkeep database. So you can see I have some CNC machines here. If I scroll over, I have some very long asset names in there. Here's an ID, here's the parent assets, and then I can see a count of work orders. Now, if you want to see parts associated or any variety of kind of data mixed in with this, it's simply joining a lot of those together so that you can find that. Again, if you want to see locations or custom fields. So this is the data view. Then you can actually get into the visualization view of how this won't be super relevant, but all right, I want to see a bar chart for some of these other metrics so you can start to build out reports here. So highly encourage you to play around with this a little bit, check the help files, and contact your customer support or your specific CSM. And essentially, when you do build those reports, you can then create custom dashboards. So that way it will filter and display the way you want to and have some of those filters. One thing is that you can share them with your organization, or you can have your own specific ones. What I really like to do is get into the preventive maintenance, where then you can see based on PMs that have future due dates coming up. So then I can actually see the next due dates from a very simplistic data view, which helps you when those work orders haven't yet triggered. That's just a very quick overview. If anybody wants to have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us, your CSM, or customer support as well.
Cool. Well, I think it's about time to wrap up. So at this point, we're going to thank you all so much for coming. We really do appreciate your time, and we hope that you find these new features and updates valuable. And again, if you have any questions that went unanswered and you need help with some of these things, please do reach out to your customer success manager. And we really appreciate you guys being here. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.